Hello, folks. It is February 1st, 2022. I'm here today because it's been a long time since I have presented a student's or a candidate's work for video review. And task one is my specialty, and so this task one here I know very well. You can see I've done several videos on this particular one, and let's just jump right in, shall we? Next slide. Okay, so to understand how to get a high band score in task one, the band script. Task one is about achieving a goal. That's why you've got task achievement as opposed to task response in there in that first position. Once my captions are being cut off. Okay, so here they are, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And if you compare certain words, I want you to think about how these words affect what this candidate has done. I think I kind of put it in there. Yeah. In 6 and 7, addresses the requirements of the task. Covers the requirements of the task. Okay, well, what are the requirements of the task? Well, you can find those in the question itself, where it provides 4 verbs in the instructions. Select, report. The last one is make comparisons. You have to do that. Okay, and if you don't make comparisons, you do not cover the requirements of the task, and you won't get a 7. Right, so we're looking for comparisons. Logically organizes the information, just as opposed to arranges information in paragraphs. Okay, so you need paragraphing to get a 6. You have to arrange the ideas into groups, but they need to be organized in a logical way. Now, the way to do that is by mirroring, so copying or taking from the format or the order that you present the main ideas in your overview. This candidate does know what an overview is, as we'll see, but the body paragraphs don't follow the overview, and they must in order for the paragraphs to be logical and cohesive. In the world of vocabulary, in 7 you need to show a sufficient range as opposed to simply an adequate range. So the key word here is range, and range means a variety of different terms or variations of the same term to express precise meaning. So we're looking for range. And then in grammar, oops, we missed one. Grammar. All right. Error-free sentences. You need to have some. Frequently. No mention of error-free sentences in 6. However, the mistakes must not reduce communication or cause confusion, except for rarely. Okay, so let's look at how the grammar structure makes this one actually not a question of 6 or a 7, but a 5 or a 6. So you need to make comparisons to cover the requirements. Mirror your overview so that your paragraphs are logically organized. Vary vocabulary for range. And know your conjunctions, particularly whereas in this case, to create error-free complex sentences. Tips of the day. So let's take a look at the task. Here it is. This is a original, genuine copyright to Cambridge, not mine. And it shows, what does it show? Retail sales and rentals for films in a particular store. A particular store. One store. Between 2002 and 2011. Now, rarely do people ever think to do this, but, take a moment and look at what the numbers indicate on a precise, more detailed level. So, in one store, how many DVDs do you need to sell to reach, say 70,000 DVDs in a year? Okay, well, there's 365 days in a year. So if you sold 10, that would be 3,650. You sold 100, it would be 36,500. So to reach 70,000, you'd have to sell 200 DVDs per day. Well, 75 DVDs. Oh yeah, more than. So I'm taking a look at this number here. Do I need my little pointer for that? I think I do. Do I? No. Where is it? So, just as an example, 365 times to get to 73,000, that's number. It says they were still selling 200 VHS copies a day in 2002. Anyway, point being is that if you break it down into other numbers, it shows that you can express the information in a variety of ways. So what do we see? Well, first of all, you've got two main trends. You're looking for main trends. The rentals going down and DVD sales going up and then falling off. There is more information here. There is this, which is the collapse of VHS sales, and this, which is the rise of Blu-ray. Are these the main information? When I look visually at this graphic, I barely notice them. Okay, so therefore, do let your eyes do some work when you're trying to identify what are the main trends. What's the main information here? Remember, that's the first instruction. It tells you, or summarizes the first instruction, but report the main features, not all the features, just the main ones. If you report all the features of the graph, you will not be doing what it's asking. So identifying the main features is key. Okay, I'm back with some coffee here. All right, so your introduction's perfect. It's fine. Overall, good. That's the beginning of the overview. The DVDs. Well, we want to use the definite article if we have already defined what it is that the noun is. So we haven't talked about DVDs yet. So, since we don't know, we would just use DVDs, not the. Are the highest selling product of the store. In the store, I think would be a better choice here over the years. Okay, great. Great start. That is obviously the most important or the most obvious feature of this graph. Whereas with a comma never begins sentence. Rentals show a downward trend throughout the given period. Okay, sure. But this is not a complete sentence. I'll go into the use of whereas later at the end. So please, wait for that. Okay, the colors, by the way, green is grammar, yellow is vocabulary, lexical resource. Additionally, the sales of VHS are decreasing. Okay, now, key tip or process in task 1 is when you're analyzing your task and you're looking at the graph, what years, when is the graph, or when is this stuff happening? It's from 2002 to 2011. So even though the graph exists in the present moment, it is just a representation of what we're talking about, and that's something that's in the past. Look for ways to use the different tenses found in English to accurately and with a variety of grammar structures show what's going on. So past tense, past simple means that it started in the past, it's finished in the past, and it's over. Present perfect, something that started in the past but continues to this day or still has an effect on this day. Past perfect is something that happened in the past before something else happened in the past that we're mentioning now. So the past in the past. Don't talk and drink at the same time. Talking and drinking coffee at the same time. Must be careful. I'll leave that in there for comedic effect. Look at this. This is interesting. Never seen this before. I bought some paper towels, and they were very good value. I think because they're defective. Someone forgot to put the perforations in them. There's no like breaks in them. Well, fortunately, me being a teacher, I have office supplies at the hand all the time. On hand, not at the hand. Coffee on the floor. Coffee on my leggings. Coffee on my glasses. Oh, look. See, now, there's a hint of a perforation here. Oh, see? Sort of a vague, like they dented it or something. Oh! Worked. World's worst paper towels. Okay. Where were we? Okay. The tents. Okay. The rentals show, yeah, it does show now a downward trend throughout the years. Additionally, sales of VHS are decreasing. No, they're not decreasing now. Decreased. And at last, no need for that in there. No longer being sold in 2006. Were no longer sold. Weren't sold. We're no longer being sold. That's fine. But you need the were in there. The blue, by the way, is coherence and cohesion. It's the correct use and overuse of cohesive devices. And at last is not needed there. Here's back to the whereas. Two whereases in a paragraph is a no-no, and we'll talk about whereas later on. Whereas the addition of Blu-ray films, we don't need the there, in 2007 is consistently growing. Time period has ended. So you've got opportunities here to use things like the past continuous, the past perfect, rarely used or less frequently used tenses that will provide you the opportunity to show a mastery of the different grammatical tenses. Find those opportunities and use them. Okay, so now that was the overview, which is an overview when the information was sufficient, was adequately selected, or was it? Let's go back real quick. Wait. Oh. Okay. So in this overview, you've talked about DVDs, rentals, VHS, and Blu-ray. Now, have you selected anything? Remember, to select means to choose among many. I want this one, leave that one. So if you talk about everything, you're not selecting. So there might be an argument to be made that the information was not selected appropriately. It wasn't selected at all. It's just all of it. Hey, body paragraphs. Now, here's what I talk about in terms of organization matching your overview. What did you talk about as the first thing in the overview? Appropriately, you mentioned the dominance of DVD sales. So you should start your body paragraphs with the same thing that you started your overview with. Okay? An expansion of the overview given before. In 2002, the rentals were okay. Now, here's one that is one of the most common mistakes made in English punctuation. Everyone, well, not everyone, but it's certainly perhaps the most common I see, which is not remembering to use a comma after starting a sentence with a time phrase. So if you have a sentence that begins with, in 2002, you must include a comma after 2002. Same thing with any time phrase, no matter how long or short it is, be it nowadays, or over the last few years, or sometime in the future, or billions and billions of years ago, whatever. If it's a time phrase, then it needs a comma. And do the rentals. Why the? Oh, you already mentioned them. That's right. We're at the peak. Okay. First of all, we're at a peak. And now, is it a peak? What is a peak? A peak, I think, it's like a mountain, right? It's going up and it's going down. A peak cannot be used, should not be used, when talking about a trend that is just in one direction. It's just a downslope. There's no other side to this mountain for there to be a peak. Okay, how do you know that in 2001, the year before this graph, rentals were probably even higher, just extenuating this trend. So it's not a peak of anything. It's a maximum, it's at its highest on this graph, but in order to be a peak, it has to go up and down. That's why it's red. Now, red is task response. So that means, which includes reporting the information accurately, amounting, peak, comma, amounting to 180,000, and then nothing, straight into however, no punctuation at all. Okay, I hope you see how that's incorrect. However, comma, faced the drastic decline over the years. Faced the drastic. Don't need the, and then drastic, well, would you call it that? It seems like, drastic, what does it mean? It means short, sudden, and severe, and a lot. Well, it's not a lot. It goes down steadily. Okay, here, by, in the first 2 years, it only dropped about 10%. Then it slowly continued to fall. But it's not a drastic decline. But those that we're counting for approximately 59,000 for the year 2011. Okay, that's the end of the period. Okay. Decline over the years, ending at 59,000. Approximately 59,000 in 2011. Is it? Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Meanwhile, all right, now you've used meanwhile correctly. Meanwhile, you can use to start a sentence to talk about how it runs at the same time as something else. Meanwhile, the DVDs remained DVDs. What was it? Okay, yeah, the sales of DVDs, not just DVDs, remained in an ever-increasing demand, comma, hitting the peak in 2007. Now here you've used peak correctly, hitting a peak in the year 2007, comma, with sales of more than 200,000. Correct. But, God, this sentence is really long. But the sales reduced gradually. Did the sales reduce? Or did they fall? I do a whole different video talking about the difference between decline and reduce and how they're used. Sales did not reduce here, sales declined. So it happened on its own. With another phrase, with the lowest in the year 2011, comma, around 180,000. Nevertheless, it is still the most popular option. Okay. After meanwhile, we've got meanwhile, the DVDs rated an increase in demand. Okay, that's one phrase. Hitting the peak, that's two phrases. A peak, a phrase here, or a clause has a verb. Okay, so we've got hitting, remain, and then hitting, the sales, but the sales reduced, with the lowest sales being, it's not really said, being, it should be there, nevertheless, it is still. So you got 4 or 5 clauses connected together in one sentence. That makes it very difficult to follow. Okay, you see that? You got all these different things that could be sentences by themselves. Meanwhile, DVDs remain in ever-increasing demand, period. They hit their peak in 2007, period. The sales were more than 200,000, period. But the sales reduced gradually, period. The lowest was in the year 2001, period. Period. It is still the most popular option. That was actually like 5 or 6, wasn't it? Too many clauses. Now, without any connection between the two paragraphs, there's no cohesive device between them, and very little understanding of why they were put together the way they are. Well, actually, they do make sense. Maximums used incorrectly here. You need a comma after 2002, and then once again we have a run-on sentence, comma splice, where you're connecting too many ideas using commas. Once again, it's a maximum amount on this chart, sure. So ultimately leading to the eradication of the product. Leading to the eradication of. It's a nice phrase. Well, I don't want to call it nice, but it's advanced vocabulary that's appropriate and good collocation in other places. Not here. I'm picturing, armed men coming into the shop saying, "Where are your VHS sales? We're going to eradicate them," taking them out back and putting holes in them. Anyway, yeah, it wasn't eradicated. Discontinued, perhaps. Or, were no longer being sold. Who knows? At least not at this store. But they weren't eradicated. Now, in the year 2007, those names were introduced. Were they? They were around before that, a little bit. Maybe just at this shop, should clarify. With just 10,000, exactly. 10,000 precisely. Is it though? Dun 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 dun. We have our first complete inaccuracy. Okay, so we know that the y-axis is, we can see the 50,000, so each tick must be 10,000. So to reach 10,000, it has to get to the first tick. It does not. It's about 1/10 of the way up, or even 2/10, very, very small. So it's 1,000, or maybe even 2,000. But it's definitely not 10,000. And you should see that because, look, 2005, when the VHS was eradicated, you have mentioned 10,000 and then use 10,000 again. Those two graphics, once again, that's here, not 10,000. We have more than 10,000. The marginal increase in sales. See, now here's another odd combination. Marginal means slightly. 5 times increase, 5-fold increase is good. Actually, you've compared, but it's not marginal. You did actually make a comparison. Waited until the very end. Right. So don't just explain the trends. Compare the points within them, and you did it there. Finally. Okay, so that'll take a little bit from my, and that's it. That's your report. Where's my next? Oh yeah. So remember, make comparisons, mirror your overview, vary your vocab, and know your conjunctions. Let's look at how that comes together. Make comparisons. How might one have done this? Well, you did it at the very end, 5 times, kind of awkwardly. By that point, the examiner might not have been looking for it, and you might have missed it altogether. How about this? By 2009, DVDs were sold, past tense, passive, at more than double the rate of rented films. So, I'm comparing 2 different media. See, 2009 You can see it, 2009 here. I just picked that one because it was easy to see. The big dark line is at least twice as big as the small white line. This is close to 200,000. This is less than 90,000. So I can see at a glance that it's more than double. This is a comparison between DVDs and rented films, or rentals, as they call it here. Okay, mirror. No, back one. Mirror your overview. As I mentioned, your overview started appropriately with the DVD sales and their dominance. So you want to begin your body paragraphs with that same information. The most details of that. DVDs became the leading format in 2004 and maintained that position through onward. Now, I haven't used on one hand or firstly or any of those awkward cohesive devices, but simply by beginning a body paragraph with what the overview begins with, it helps the reader follow along. Vary your vocabulary. We'll get to whereas here in a moment. So here we have the keyword density from wordcounter.net. Use the word sales 6 times, year 6 times, film over. So, whereas was used twice in the introduction. There are other ways of selling or not selling, saying or not saying sales. Be careful not to repeat the same terms again and again. Know your conjunctions. In this case, whereas. Whereas shows contrast, okay? And it has a main and a subordinate clause, 2 parts that they're comparing, contrasting. Okay, look at your first sentence. Overall, the DVD is the product of the store over the years. Whereas, okay, now, if you're trying to show the contrast between those two, you're not making a good choice because, well, you could, but what you point out is that DVDs are at the top, okay? That's where they are. Rentals fell throughout the period. Okay, now that's not where something is and where it's going are different, and so they're not two good items to make contrast out of. Poor parallelism, say. And again, you could say, whereas yeah, whereas in fact, don't I do that in a moment here? Oh, that is the last one. Yeah. Okay, so we could say whereas rentals showed a downward trend throughout the given period, DVD sales began the period with by rocketing into the top position, which it held with a slow decline after 2007. So, whereas needs 2 parts. The 2 parts need to be the same type of speech, but they must contrast. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, this report is long overdue. So once again, remind you folks, pay attention to the band descriptors and understand that there's certain requirements that you must do, certain things you must achieve. That's why they call it task achievement in order to get a high band score. You need to logically organize things and use a variety of vocabulary and grammar as well. Good luck.